a vital community look like? Who participates in it? Who has a voice in it? All of these things are things that we need to address. So I'd like to welcome our speakers, and I'm going to turn it over to Nils Lunder from the Feather River Land Trust. He's going to be our speaker facilitator. Nils, why don't you take it?
Thank you, Maria. Wonderful job with the intro. Thank you for the music. The levity, a little levity is nice right now. Well, welcome everyone to this virtual world we live in right now. Before we get started, I just kind of wanted to take a moment of silence to mourn those who have been lost to us and to the planet in the last little while, and to mourn the loss of habitat and communities. It's a really hard time right now that we're going through. And anyway, so let's just take a few seconds to reflect on that. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're living in a challenging time like none of us have seen before. And I feel like now's a great time to focus on our strengths and our partnerships and our relationships that we have. And to me, that's really what defines a community, whether it's a place or just a group of friends. So today we're going to be talking about a concept called community vitality. And having grown up here in this region, it's something that I'm very interested in, and I have ideas about how to make our community stronger, but it's a very challenging subject. And our panel today consists of a variety of folks who are doing a lot of amazing things in the face of adversity, even before what we're going through now, to try to bring cohesion into these places where we live and to move things in a positive direction. So I wanted to start by introducing Mrs. Susan Briner, who's an entrepreneur and an activist, a community activist, and also an organizer, and also involved with the Lake Almanor Basin Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Susan Briner.
Thank you, Nils. Didn't want to go first. Welcome all of you. Yeah, as Nils said, I think I'm here representing the Lake Almanor Area Chamber of Commerce, although I am part of several other efforts in the community that are related to community vitality. So I was going to share with you a few of them. And I was kind of excited to see the people who had called in, because Karen Cleven's on the line and she can speak to one of these as well or better as I can. But so Karen, I'm hoping you will speak up when I try to share. I'm going to share actually 4 things with you: the Almanor Basin Community Consortium, the Feather River Tourism Association that has entered an exciting level of existence, I'll put it, our Chestertown Plaza project, and then what has come to my attention most recently, and someone asked me to share it with you briefly tonight, and those are the opportunities and challenges that are coming out of PG&E's relicensing of the lake. Some of the due diligence we need to do in order to keep some of the recreational enhancements going that they agreed to back in 2004. So first, the Almanor Basin Community Consortium was a brainchild of our Chamber of Commerce as we looked at all the wonderful things going on in our community, yet most often found that there was no real sharing of what was going on. They're great projects, but often the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and had we known that, we might not have duplicated our efforts. And we realized that probably one of the most important things we do as a chamber is to facilitate sharing and collaboration amongst our community. So we put this idea together of a consortium where we would bring all the different sectors of the community together to simply share, to hopefully share, communicate, share visions, ideas, challenges, issues, and maybe, people hate me using that word, but cross-fertilize just a little bit. So we put something together on November 14th. Maria was there, and we invited 18 different sectors in our community to come out, and we invited everybody in hopes that we'd have 5 or 6 people show up. And we actually had like 63 plus people come to the meeting. It was amazing. And what we had hoped originally was that we would sell the people on this idea of meeting twice a year in a round table, more of an oval as you can see here, to maybe just talk about economic development, the challenges and issues that everyone has, in hopes that we could go from what you see on the left to something more of what you see on the right there, with the stagecoach and everybody going in the right direction. Well, what happened was, instead of literally trying to sell everyone on the idea, very quickly the energy in the room got strong, and we realized that people wanted to go much further than just listening to me try to sell the idea. So I don't know what the next slide is, and I'm already off on mine. But these were what our goals were. Yeah, to facilitate a meeting, and then to get across the different sectors like hospitality, nonprofits, retail, all to get together individually and maybe get some ideas going to address the challenges that we all have. And then the third thing was to eventually create a funding foundation for some of the collaborative projects that might fall out of all this. So what happened that night is that people were ready to sit down and talk about what their challenges and issues were within their sectors. And what we found out was many of these were cross-sector issues and challenges. And the next slide shows a quasi-SWOT analysis, because really all we did was talk about our challenges and the threats to our community. We didn't get to strengths and opportunities. We'd hoped we would have gotten to that in April, but as you know, COVID hit and we didn't have an April meeting. But many of the issues that people brought up were very consistent between and across sectors. They were, of course, the declining and aging population that we have in Plymouth County, one of the few counties with a declining population. The labor pool, the unskilled labor pool that we have, lack of affordable housing. Even if we can find people to come in and do the jobs, we can't find any place to put them. Overregulation was one that came up quite a few times, whether it was at the federal, state, or county level. The increased costs of doing business came up a lot in the hospitality and restaurant business, as well as the trades, construction. Available activities and support for families, or the lack of year-round activities for kids, the growing social emotional needs of families in our area were a huge one in our educational sector. The need for all-season activities to try to keep some of our kids engaged, the internet, and it goes on and on. You can see some of the ones I haven't hit here.
5 minutes, Susan.
Oh, really? I only have 5 left? Okay, so now we are at the stage where we are getting ready to form that foundation. And we have a group of people interested in doing the strategic planning for the foundation that will work on this. And I'm looking for anybody else who might be interested in that. And now I'm going to go on to the next thing. And Kieran Clevin is a big part of this with me, and it's the Feather River Tourism Association. We're really excited to, yeah, you can keep going, Nils, one more. The Feather River Tourism Association was put together, well, it was part of a group of lodging providers and leaders in the community of travel and tourism that were, we started about 6 years ago to try and work on tourism, advancing and enhancing tourism and travel to our area, because it is actually the second leading employer in the area, right next to government, and there's no funding that comes from anywhere that's stable for tourism promotion in our area. So we started about 6 years ago working on a tourism investment district that would allow for a small assessment on lodging guests to our area that would pass through to a nonprofit, not to the government. to do just that, to promote tourism and travel to our area and tourism projects. And basically what we were looking for was obviously enhancing our shoulder seasons. We have plenty of tourism during the summer. We're excited to share that after 6 years and thousands of hours of volunteer hours, which Karen can attest to, $45,000 in private funds, we on August 18th got the Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution of intent to form the district after we had petitioned and got petitions from 64% of our lodging providers who would pay over 50% of the assessment to form it. There'll be a public hearing on September 15th to so people can share testimony to establish the district. And on October 6th, hopefully the board will vote to establish the district and we'll be off and running. And then the real work will start to execute the plan. We won't see any real funding coming in. The first funding will come in probably October of next year. And but it's very exciting for us because it will be a stable source of funding. We'll see at this point somewhere around $190,000 to $200,000 a year to invest in tourism projects, tourism promotion, all with the goal of putting more heads in beds and stimulating our economy. How am I doing, Nils?
Minute and a half.
Okay, the plaza, the Chester Plaza. You know, all I'm going to share about that is as we looked at the easiest and most effective way to develop the economy in Chester, we did some research and we saw that probably the most cost-effective and catalyzing thing we could do was create a plaza in Chester for year-round activities. We're working on that. There's a group of us working on it. We'd like for others to get involved. We have a lot of community support to put it together. Right now, there's 2 locations we're looking at. One of them we'd have to actually purchase. The other one we're looking at a private-public partnership with the county to create it at Chester Park. And everything is sort of stalled out in terms of fundraising that we were doing for it. But right now, we haven't stalled out on our petition to the county to look at Chester Park. So if you're interested in that, one of the slides has my phone number on it. Please take part in that. Okay, do I have like 30 seconds?
Yep.
Oh, shoot. Okay. This last one, Mike Wilhoit asked me to share with you tonight, so it's sort of out of the blue, but it's sort of exciting because I didn't know some of these things were part of the 2004 agreement that several public agencies came to with PG&E in the relicensing process of our lake. They agreed on everything, of course, except for the one issue, which was the cold water issue that needed to go down to Rock Creek and the Cresta powerhouses. But the thing that was exciting that Mike shared with me that we need to do our due diligence on to keep going is that there's an entire list of things that PG&E agreed to do around our lake that include improvements at the Last Chance Campground, the Rocky Point Campground, improvements across a whole bunch of Forest Service shoreline facilities, East Shore Group Campground, North Shore Public Boat Launch with all the facilities just like our Canyon Dam Boat Launch, Stover Ranch Day Use Area, which would allow shoreline access to the residents of Chester. The only thing that has been done from that is the Marvin Alexander Beach on the West Shore. There's an East Shore Day Use Area, a Westwood Beach is to be improved. It goes on and on. The thing I want everyone to know here is that it is in jeopardy because the one issue that there was a problem with is that cold water. And if you want to know more about that, because I bet you my time is up, I want to bring it to the Lake Almanor Watershed Group on October 8th. Is it 8th? Yes, to share it with you. But the development across the recreational areas is very exciting. And I see Carlos is on the line. And it's things, Carlos, that we need to get together and talk about. How's that? Did I do it?
Yeah, you did great. You did great. Thank you, Susan. Thanks for all the hard work you're putting into the community. So next up, we have Mr. Carlos España, and he's an amazing volunteer as well. And he's going to be talking to you all about a project that a lot of us have been working on related to recreational trails and access to open space around our communities. Carlos? Are you out there, buddy? While we're waiting for Carlos to unmute himself and unblock his video, there he is, unmuted. Are you there, Carlos?
I am here.
Hey.
There we
Welcome.
go. Wanted to thank you. I want to say hello to everybody. I want to thank you, Nils and Maria, for inviting our group to speak. Dove, I don't see the view graphs yet. There we go. Thank you for inviting our group to talk about the role of active transportation in growing community vitality. And as you can imagine, we think that trails and biking are vitality in action. Next slide. So we're going to tell this story in a different way. We've just announced the new concept plan that we're putting together, and it's called the Lake Almanor Basin Regional Trail System Concept Plan. What you're seeing here is a depiction of the cover. And within the document, we have sections that talk about background information, the vision of what the trails will look like and how they'll be used. And section 3 will talk about making it happen. Next slide. So here's the gang that spent the last 5 years working on this document. We've had lots of meetings, and we've had about 6 or 7 outreach events. And we with the Trails Alliance, not yet. Anyway, we with the Trails Alliance would like to stress all the services that National Park Service, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program has put together. They have just been great on leading the planning effort, and also they liked our effort so much that some of them volunteered to actually write or assemble the writing and the pictures into this document. Next slide, please. So here it is, the proposed trail system. It's a combination of our trails around the lake and an extension to the west to the Pacific Crest Trail, and an extension to the east to Westwood up to the Bis Johnson Trail. So what we're putting together is about 75 miles of trails and connecting to some wonderful trails on either side. The yellow balls represent the communities, and we wanted to strengthen our connections to the communities and be able to spread out the efforts, the actions of visitors, so that we're not concentrated in one location. Next slide. Section 2 of our plan document shows various pieces of information for each trail segment. Now, between each of the communities, there are 1 or more trail segments. This one depicts a summary for Almanor Rail Trail, and you see summary details, dramatic photos, and alignment maps. Next photo, next slide. So we have coded each segment for a number of reasons. The primary reason is each segment depicts a specific landowner, and we try to deal with segments that deal with only 1 or 2 landowners so that we can get to know them, so that we can get to know their procedures for introducing trails, and also to spread the work amongst our Trail Alliance members. Most importantly, we wanted to connect people more deeply into the beauty of our watershed. We wanted to increase opportunities towards year-round recreation. We wanted to tell the Almanor Basin story and the story of our biggest resource, Chester, through signage, exhibits, and wayfinding. And we want to promote the extremely popular theme of bicycling, both short distance and long distance. Next slide. So section 3 talks about making it happen. So we have an implementation strategy, and we group some of the trails into near-term, mid-term, and long-term segments. We've been working on this document for 5 years, but at the same time, we've been trying to make things happen. So hopefully a number of you have heard about, over on the right, there's a designated trail R8. That is the extension of the Lake Almanor Recreation Trail from its north end to the super ditch. And Caltrans has committed $2.5 million of their transportation funds to plan, design, and build that trail for us. It's going to be a beautiful addition, much of it along the lake. Up at the top, you see L3, which kind of covers both the Olson Barn and the Collins Pines Nature Trail. And I think those of you who have driven by Olson Barn see that there's a lot of activities, and that's a lot due to Nils and his gang cutting trails through the property. It's a lovely site, and we're getting good responses. Up in the other section, I don't know if you can see the one that says R4. It's under my picture on my camera. It's pink, and that is the commitment of Collins Pines to donate their 12-mile rail trail to Almanor Recreation and Park District. We really appreciate the idea of a donation, but at the same time, it is a very old trail, started in the 1930s, and we wanted to do due diligence on that trail, so we got a grant from Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and those studies are ongoing, and the results are expected to be out within 18 months. Next slide, please. The appendix shows the efforts of our National Park Service landscape architects. They wanted to represent more visually some of the elements of our trail system. So on the left, you have a depiction of a trailhead where there's a main road coming into the area, represented in the gray. Then people are routed to parking stalls, including RVs and trailers. And we also intend to put a portable restroom. And in this case, the National Forest Service wants to put a host camp. We also have depictions of what an entrance to a trail might look like. And that's titled Sense of Place. And lastly, we have trail furniture examples in the bottom corner. Next slide. Now, a lot of my discussion has been about regional trails outside of the main community of Chester. These are important. We were able to define them in the active transportation plan that Plumas County put together. But how do we create some vitality in Chester? Well, the Trails Group thinks that hiking and biking additions are critical. Next slide. We have an opportunity coming up where Caltrans is coming to town. It's not right away, but they're coming to town, and they are responsible for redoing Main Street in Chester. And it's quite a section of Main Street. The planning will be done between 2022 and 26, and construction will begin in 2026. And so we think that now is the time that more members of the community can get involved in the trails and bikeways process and start thinking about wayfinding, start thinking about exhibits that depict elements of Chester, important elements of Chester. And we have the time, and as you can imagine, with the little resources we have, it's going to take a long time. Next slide, please. So why do we stress active transportation for community revitalization? Well, the concept or the category of outdoor recreation as a percent or as a size of annual consumer spending is very sizable, $900 billion, comparable to the annual consumer spending on outpatient healthcare, quite sizable. Now, as you can imagine, this column includes not only buying things like a boat, a backpack, a bicycle, but they broke out the parts of what consumers spend on site at vacation spots. Next slide. So we took that information and broke it out into the various types of outdoor recreation, and lo and behold, we find that trail sports, which is a combination of day hiking and biking, is the winner in this group of competitors for consumer spending. So we feel strongly that this element has to be a part of our revitalization and our community vitalization. Next slide.
One more minute, Carlos.
Thank you. Concluding thoughts. I've got to stress that making trails has a lot of conservation benefits, but it has a lot of other benefits: quality of life, health exercise, economic revitalization, and historic preservation. So the Rails to Trails people are telling us that the growth in trails is enormous. And especially with COVID. But the key thing here is most Americans say that having safe places to walk, bike, and be active outside now matters more than ever. So we feel that the trend towards sustainable community vitality through biking and hiking is within our reach if we can all focus resources to make it happen. Thank you.
Wow, great presentation, Carlos. Well done, man. Very nice. Thanks for all the hard work you're putting into this project.
You're welcome.
And into your local community. It's wonderful. Right on. Okay. Well, next we're going to shift gears a little bit, and Vanessa Vasquez from the Feather River Land Trust is going to talk a little bit about how our organization, Feather River Land Trust, is working in our realm and working to support community vitality. Vanessa, are you there?
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to see everybody this evening. I'm Vanessa Vasquez. I'm the People and Land Program Coordinator for Feather River Land Trust. And this concept and conversation about community vitality is really timely for the Land Trust. This is our 20th anniversary as a local grassroots conservation organization. And we're looking forward to what the next 20 years may look like in our region and what our role is in the ecosystem, the environment, and our economy. And we're also, asking ourselves some questions about how we can be a more equitable and inclusive conservation organization. So this is this conversation tonight. It will continue, and I look forward to more discussions with all of these other organizations and partners as we update our strategic plan next year. I'm going to share just some current projects that we're working on that currently add to community vitality in this discussion. The first is our land protection program. So our expertise as a land trust is to do these conservation land transactions. And we're currently working in our beautiful Intermountain Valleys with willing ranchers, with local ranchers who want to permanently protect their agricultural resources for current and future generations. And what that looks like is we partner with them to do conservation easements. And these are legally binding agreements that is essentially selling development rights and restricting land use conversion. So restricting these agricultural lands from being subdivided or turned into ranchettes. And these ranchers do that because it's an economic incentive. And the land trust, we leverage state and federal dollars and grant monies and bring that into our local community and into the hands of these agricultural producers to sustain ranching and agricultural production in Plumas, Sierra, and Lassen counties. So that's adding to our local economy and continuing, hopefully, the next generation of ranchers and farmers in our area. The other land protection program that we're working on that you've probably heard about and we talked about in a previous State of the Lake is our efforts with PG&E. And this is a different type of land protection. They are also conservation easements, but instead of us giving money to PG&E, these easements are being donated to the land trust. And what these easements do is really protect public access. So that's one of our primary goals as a land trust, is not only to protect natural resources, but also to protect public access. So these easements with, on Lake Almanor, on Mountain Meadows, which we already have closed on, we already have an easement there, on Butte Valley, on Bucks Lake, they permanently protect public access. So camping, hunting, fishing, boating, other types of recreation. And we all know how important that recreation is, as we've been talking about with the other speakers, for our economic base and for our communities. So that's that's a big commitment that the Land Trust is taking on. And then some other projects we're working on that add to community vitality is we also are landowners ourselves. We own 5 preserves across the watershed. In the Lake Almanor Basin, we have the beautiful Olson Barn Meadow, and then in Westwood, we have the Gateway property, which allows walking access to Mountain Meadows Reservoir. And we're working, and we have been for a few years. You've probably seen Nils out there doing all that hard work at Olson Barn. We're working to protect these historical treasures like the Olson Barn or our beautiful barns at the Heart K Ranch, and build some trails, maintain trails to really bolster community access to these properties. And also we see them as a really valuable ecotourism destination, and then also for local education. So sharing about cultural history with our local schools, and providing access for students to use the properties. And then we've recently been partnering with Feather River College a little bit to provide some hands-on opportunities through their internship program for students that are in environmental studies or ranch management to do some hands-on hard work and learn about land management. So that's another partnership that we've been doing that for a couple years, and we'd like to build on that. And then just kind of organizationally, as a land trust, we are kind of one of the larger nonprofits in the area. We have 14 wonderful staff members. I'm really proud to be working for this organization. And we all live and work here, raise families here, and contribute to the local economy. A lot of us wear many hats and volunteer or work part-time for other organizations doing good stuff. And then as a land trust, we are committed to buying local. So we, from office supplies to thousands of dollars in fencing supplies every year, we're using local vendors. And we also hire local contractors for any land management or building needs that we have that we can't do ourselves. And for the 5 preserves that we own, we also pay property taxes. So those are just kind of some of the things that we do as a local land trust to contribute to this concept of community vitality. And it's an ongoing and evolving discussion. So if you have any questions about the People and Land program, which I work on, or the land trust in general, you can ask during the question and answer, or feel free to contact me or Nils directly. So thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Great job. Well done.
Thanks.
Well, we're going to wrap it up tonight with a great speaker, Jonathan Cusel. He's the Executive Director of Sierra Institute for Community and Environment. Dr. Cusel, thanks for joining us tonight. And I'd love to hear your perspective on community vitality.
Happy to. Nils, thank you. Thank you all for coming out and listening to all the presenters. Excellent presentations preceding. We have a slightly different wrinkle on community vitality, and not that we disagree with anything that's been presented, but I thought it would be fun and useful to share some of the work that we've been doing. I think most of you are familiar with the Sierra Institute for Community and Environment, but we are in Indian Valley. We work locally, regionally, even nationally. So let's see if I can share my screen and give you the presentation here. Now to find. Okay.
I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it.
How are we doing, Dov? Nils, you can see it?
I'm seeing that you're sharing your screen. Yeah, it's coming up. There we go.
Are you seeing the single screen or the one that has multiple slides below it?
You're good, Jonathan.
I just see a single screen with your cover slide.
Perfect. There it is. There's that little barn that's been sitting in Indian Valley for a long time. Unfortunately, it blew down not that long ago, but is emblematic of where we are here. I want to focus on rural community development as a critical component and some of the different projects that we're doing to try to improve community vitality. This is at the Indian Valley site. Down below, you see a group meeting. I will not walk you through each individual slide, but I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing here. I think a number of you know this boundary. You certainly can see Lake Almanor in the middle. We launched the Lake Almanor Watershed Group. It was many, many years ago. And out of that sprung or was created with strategic planning, this Southwestern Watershed Group, which has really led to a lot of work that we are engaged with now, not only with the partners, but bringing in different forms of employment to work this landscape. More on that in a moment. You see a red boundary, you see a purple boundary. What's unique is we started with the idea of a particular area. It's actually grown because the partners have wanted to see it grow. These smiling faces in there happen to be our award-winning Sawyer crew. They're actually with handsaws cutting in Lassen Volcanic National Park. They're the partner, we are the partner group of the year as a result of their work thinning, reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfire. Speaking of wildfire, we'll talk more in past and future, but on the right-hand side, you see the Moonlight Fire, and that's in this area here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. Here's the Walker Fire that burned over some of the Moonlight Fire, and guess what's been burning out here? It's the Sheep Fire going into Susanville. And what this shows, though, is the last 20 years, just the 20 years of fire history. The orangish is the 2000 to 2009, and the red is the 2010 through 2019. We have work to do because fires are a part of the system. And take a look at this area. You don't see many fires that have burned in this area. You do see, of course, chips and what burned in and threatens, and is an area of concern for us. So how do we talk about Moonlight Fire and take that, and how does this fit with this whole notion of community vitality? Let me just first say that when we have fires like this, we lose not only beautiful forests, but we lose complexity. And so 28% of the area is a shrub complex compared to 3% before. So one of the visions that we developed with a number of folks meeting regularly in the county was this notion of multiple sites using chips. We got to use low value material. We got to add value to that. And this came out of this Pure Map project, the Plumas Energy Efficiency and Renewables Management Action Plan, which visualized a facility in Crescent Mills and heating operations. And so the first biomass boiler was established in Quincy a couple of years ago, functioning really well now. And this is Crescent Mills, where we are putting a wood utilization campus. The key point to walk away from this is, how do we increase wood utilization capacity and address landscape health? Here's where the community vitality comes in. We've got to have healthy landscapes, and folks well understand that. But we can employ folks. We're not just talking about a job in the mill. Those are important jobs. We're talking about new jobs, creating new opportunities from some of the material that we have in our woods that we need to get out. I hesitate to say only waste wood, because sometimes we're taking out material that still has value, but the success in developing new operations is that ability to add value to some of the lowest value material. I have to point out the lower right-hand slide. Some of you may have seen this one before. This is the first full cross-laminated timber structure in California that houses that biomass boiler that I mentioned. It produces heat and electricity. This is all wood, 5-ply and 7-ply in that building. But here's what I really want to focus on. We know the need, and this is something that the Sierra Institute is working on, is creating a ladder of opportunities. It's not just creating new businesses, but how do we employ people to do the work? And I think many of you have heard of P-Crew, and that's our high school age folks who go out and do a variety of restoration projects, including some with the Feather River Land Trust, but a whole variety of projects. But we now have a young adult crew, and we have more. In fact, what we are launching is the Feather River Ecosystem Restoration Workforce Training Program to begin training a whole variety of folks for some of the work that's available. So here's P Crew. We get them from urban areas and we recruit across Plymouth County and a number of other rural areas. We have 12 students in a group and they're paid to do this work. And they work hard doing what they're doing. This is just a slide of some of the activities and some of the accomplishments that they have succeeded in achieving over the last few years. And we've launched a young adult crew now that does thinning work, not with chainsaws, although we have our Sawyer crew that I mentioned that won the award in the park. But our young adult crew is now doing thinning work. And we also now have started, I never would have thought we would be putting together a NEPA crew. And what they're doing is the reviews, wildlife reviews, botanical reviews, other kinds of reviews so we can get out and do some of the thinning that's needed. And I think many of you may be aware of the Lake Almanor West thinning activities, and this is all part of the South Lassen Watershed Group. So we're creating this ladder of a workforce, if you will. Our young adults, we have our P Crew, we have also other folks marking trees and folks doing stand exams. And now we have a NEPA crew because economic development using college graduates, those with master's degrees, to do the work that needs to be done so we can actually thin and do some of the restoration that's needed. That work is absolutely essential. And that's what,
Jonathan, 2 minutes.
Yep, thank you, Nils. So I'm already close to a wrap up here by saying that this area is so critical in the importance of the watershed. It is important to us as a landscape, as part of our communities, and how we can do more in providing or creating jobs to steward that landscape is a really powerful way to improve community vitality, to improve the opportunities that people have here. So we're extremely interested in working with our locals and advancing local jobs. So that, in many of my presentations now, I've been making the case that we can do all this work on the landscape, but if we do not have the manufacturing or the wood utilization opportunities, we will not succeed with all that landscape management that's needed. So that's absolutely critical. And I'll leave you with this, in that these are some of the partners that we're involved in. They don't begin to capture all of those with whom we're working, but it takes a joint effort. And I'm particularly thrilled that we have about 25 different groups and a number of individuals that are participating in the South Lassen Watershed Group. And we're launching efforts in Indian Valley to do similar sorts of things to tackle the threats that we have in our forests as a result of climate change, as a result of drought, as a result of past land management practices. So that's it for me, and I look forward to questions and interaction with folks following this. So thanks very much. And I'll turn it back to you, Dav, on the screen.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you so much for the tireless work you put in on these ambitious projects over the decades here in the region. And yeah, so thanks to all presenters. And now we're going to open up the floor for questions and answers. And questions, maybe answers.
Please type your questions into the chat so that we can focus them. We found that if people ask their questions verbally, it just ends up taking a little bit too much time. I've been texted a quick question, which is, Jonathan, can you elaborate a little bit? Everybody knows that the forest needs treatment. Can these efforts with biomass help the economic side of that? Because we know the forest treatment's expensive.
when we identify uses for biomass and we can add value to it, then what happens is it begins to help pay its way out of the woods. One of the biggest problems of restorations is some of the low value material has low value or no value. And all it is a cost proposition to get it out. So if we can create businesses that utilize chips, whether we're making cubes or blocks or pellets, or we're actually using it as fuel and displacing fossil fuels, which is a great thing to do, which is what we did with the County Health and Human Services building. As we add value to it, people will pay for that product, and then that therefore increases the opportunity to do landscape restoration. And by the way, I did mention the quote unquote NEPA crew. The NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act, and what they're doing is the environmental compliance work, which is required under that National Environmental Policy Act. And I apologize for the acronym. We try to be careful with that, but we don't always succeed.
And just to add on to that, Jonathan, for some of you who might not see how that's relevant, commonly the Forest Service uses that as an excuse why they can't do more, right? Because it takes them a long time to do. So Jonathan and his team have been working to try to catalyze that and reduce that one barrier of many to getting these projects done.
A great example is a California Climate Investment grant that the Sierra Institute secured. Kyle Rogers heading up some of that work, but it applies to the South Lassen watershed, and Collins is benefiting from payment for thinning in the Rock Creek area of their property. So they are taking, contractor is removing some of the timber and low value material from that area. It's being used to make electricity. And what we're doing is restoring meadows and meadow habitat as a result of that project. So there's employment, there's meadow work being done, so restoration and the like. And once again, we are ideally expanding work that's being done, but expanding with the notion of habitat restoration and reducing risk of wildfire.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hey, Maria, do you have some other questions that are coming in?
Yeah, I'll
Yes.
go.
Go ahead, Dov.
There's a question here regarding the Almanor Basin being relatively free of fire. And in a previous presentation, Nils, your brother, Zeke actually mentioned that trains can be a source of fires. So the question is related to widening fuel management around BNSF tracks and kind of options or issues related to travel corridors, perhaps.
I think just speaking on my own self, speaking on behalf of myself, I think that it would be really smart to do a lot more thinning along all transportation corridors, and especially the rail corridor. I've been walking the Burlington Northern Santa Fe line, doing surveys for the conservation easement that we're going to hold on Lake Almanor, and it's not a great situation where you have steep slopes and heavy fuels fairly close to the ballast, the rock ballast along the railroad tracks. One of the tricks, though, based on my experience, is getting Burlington Northern Santa Fe or other landowners to allow access and to get the funds required to hire contractors to do that work. But yeah, generally, transportation corridors should be a high priority for fuels reduction.
So this is Carlos. I asked the question because I thought putting a trail on the east side of the tracks might be an opportunity for dual funding for a trail and fuels management. We could try to use both to make a shaded fuel break before the fire would sneak up Mount Dyer.
I think that would definitely be a good conversation starter with Burlington Northern and with PG&E and Sierra Pacific Industries. And I think that'd be a good angle to get us in the door to have the conversation.
There's another question here regarding development and promotion of ecotourism, especially within the Almanor Basin. And I think this is probably something that I could open up to any one of our panelists if somebody wanted to respond to that.
Actually, I asked that question and I was interested in Jonathan and perhaps Vanessa's response to that, because that's something the Feather River Tourism Association is looking at, most especially that's unique to our area and that would benefit all of us, whether it be tourism or our environment, to share more about our area and our watershed through ecotourism. So I was wondering what opportunities are there that you could speak to.
I can speak on behalf of the Land Trust a little bit. So we recently just finished a new website, and that website has this Get Outside section to it. And we worked with the developer to really use something called search engine optimization, which it's pretty slick. And so basically when people are Googling things about Lake Almanor or Feather River, that we would, you know, our Get Outside section would really like grab people's attention and be kind of the top of the Google search. And currently the Get Outside section is focused on our 5 preserves and the public access opportunities that are there. And we designed those pages not just for local communities to know how to access their properties, but also for ecotourists, people who want to come into the area and enjoy it. Currently, it's very much focused on what's available, you know, in the land trust world, but we envision working with other, you know, partner organizations and tourism board and chambers to kind of fill out maybe some like full day use plans or mini tours that you could do that, you know, as a visit to, like, say the Olson Barn, but, you know, also visit the rail trail and, you know, visit these businesses. So we just launched that website, but that's something that I think is an asset that we can talk more about and collaborate. You know, we'd really like to have kind of like some day use and tours that are available for outside area people. And then we were previously sponsors of the Grebe Festival, and we have been sponsors of the Sierra Valley Art and Ag Trail, and that's something that as a land trust we really want to continue to do. And you know, this COVID era has thrown everybody for a loop, but we are really committed to working with Sierra Institute and Plumas Audubon Society to bring back the Grebe Festival, because that was a really great event, and I think that people want to see that happen again. So that's another area that we'd like to work on bringing back to our community.
So Susan, if I could just add a couple of other things, and one is the potential of this area to draw more for ecotourism is extraordinary. I think it is, to that I say, be careful what we ask for, because we already see lots of mountain bikers and more trails are coming in. And I have nothing against the mountain bikers, and I'm not saying we don't want them to come in, but in terms of your question is what's the potential? I've always thought, for example, that we're so heavily roaded, there's an opportunity for a lot more biking that can be done with some coordination of when there's a logging operation. There's just an available map or something that's posted so folks can stay off those roads and not be wrestling with trucks hauling logs down steep hills and so on and so forth. But just mountain biking is one thing. The amount of water that we have here, certainly Lake Almanor and the water trails that was done. So there is so much more that can be publicized. And I think we've already seen a lot of people over the last few months, a lot more people coming up, taking advantage of the area.
And buying homes. Hey, unless there's any more questions, it's time for the wrap up. So what do you guys think? Wrap up? Maria?
Yeah, I think there are some questions, and what we're going to do is we're going to try to capture them, and then Maria and I are going to work together to try to get responses back to people. But it is almost 7:30, so I think we're going to have our wrap up and let people go when we promised.
You're muted.
Thank you. I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone, but especially our amazing, amazing presenters for sharing their wisdom, their knowledge, their research. I think this was a really interesting and provocative topic, and I think I personally feel I'm leaving with almost as many questions, if not more questions, than I came in with. And to me, that means we've had a great conversation. So I look forward to reconnecting with a lot of you and continuing these conversations. There's more opportunities to get involved. I'm going to share with you a few events that you can learn more about on both our website and the Feather River Land Trust website. But the Feather River Land Trust is going to be having a party. It'll be an online virtual house party. It's on September 22nd from 6 to 7 p.m. So don't miss out on that. On Thursday, October 1st, Sierra Institute will be hosting a film screening and then an expert panel discussion on a brand new documentary called Not If, But When. It's about wildfire solutions, and I think we can all relate to this concept right now. There will be a variety of people from different backgrounds, including the filmmaker, joining us for that panel of experts. And then because we've been so encouraged by the participation of these State of the Lake events, we want to have another, not necessarily State of the Lake, but maybe even more open, looking at the past history and the future visioning of the Almanor Basin, and maybe diving a little bit deeper into topics like wildfire and climate change, economic development, employment opportunities, recreation, tourism, and how collaborative groups are working together on all of these issues and more. And that's going to be Thursday, October 22nd at 10:30 a.m. So again, thank you very much. And I hope that I get to see you digitally or in person before too long. Take care and good night.